BANGABANDHU Satellite 1 will stay protected inside that fairing all the way up until about 3.5 minutes into flight. The fairing protects the satellite on ascent, but once we escape Earth's atmosphere, it's no longer needed and we pop it off. We are not attempting to recover this fairing on today's mission, but it's something that we'll look forward to do in future missions. So with just about 5 minutes or 6 minutes left in the countdown, let's check in with Michael on how the rocket is doing.
We're now just inside of T-minus 6 minutes, and Stage 1 and Stage 2 are both almost fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. At this point, both stages are just about 100% of fuel. Stage 1 is at 99% liquid oxygen and at 90% for Stage 2. We'll continue topping off both stages until about T-minus 2 minutes to keep the propellants as cold and therefore as dense as possible in order to fit as much propellant onto the vehicle as we can. Around the T-minus 7 minute mark, we began our engine chill procedure. The propellants are much colder than the engines, and so it's important to get the engines to the correct temperature beforehand by slowly flowing propellant through them. Liquid oxygen in particular is so much colder that it would turn into a gas upon first contact, which would be a pretty hard start for the engine. The strongback cradle is opening and will slightly retract away from the rocket. The strongback is the structure that's standing immediately next to Falcon 9 on your screen, not the larger gray structure. It will recline more fully as Falcon 9 moves. And you heard the strongback lower has begun. At T-minus 3 minutes, we'll be performing an engine wiggle. That's checking the thrust vector control system to make sure that the Merlin engines will be able to properly steer Falcon 9 during ascent. And at T-minus 60 seconds, you'll hear that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's internal flight computers have taken over the countdown. You can see the cradle is opening and it's just finished opening on your screen there. The little arm is just beneath the fairing. One more interesting change for this mission relates to the Merlin engines themselves. In Block 4, the engines were used with a constant chamber pressure. Because engine thrust depends on both the chamber pressure and external atmospheric pressure, the Block 4 engine's thrust would slowly increase by up to 10 or 15,000 pounds per engine during ascent. For Block 5, we'll be maintaining a constant thrust of 190,000 pounds until cutoff, which means we'll actually be slowly decreasing the engine's chamber pressures over time to compensate for decreasing atmospheric pressure.
Stage 1 launch load is closed out.
Otherwise, the drone ship is on standby in the Atlantic Ocean. The payload is healthy and go for launch. The range is also go for launch. And at this point, we're inside of T-minus 3 minutes and getting pretty close to T0.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Power torch now.
And you saw Falcon 9 lift off in a beautifully clear shot there at 4:14 p.m. Eastern. At T plus 10 seconds, the thrust vector control system tilted Falcon to begin a pitch kick maneuver to get it going sideways. You just heard that we're going supersonic and we're about to go through max Q when the rocket's pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
successfully achieved that major milestone of every rocket launch. We're actually decreasing the thrust in our engines a little bit around the time of max Q to minimize some of those forces. Coming up about 50 seconds from now,
And back engine chill.
there will be 3 events in quick succession. The main engines will cut off, the 2 stages will separate, and the second stage will start its Merlin vacuum engine, which you heard is just beginning its own chill procedure.